Surprise, surprise, the king is back. What's up, my man? Memphis Spence is in the building.
Hey, my man. You good? You good?
I was.
It sounds like you were getting into with RG3. I'm like, is Blake good? Does he need to tap in or something? Does he need me to explain to RG3 how I voted for him and also how I voted for Lamar Jackson? Does he need that? I mean, I could tap in, but I left it alone. So now you can handle your own.
Here's my problem. Okay. Of all people, so two things. Memphis,
right.
Of all people that should be defending him, you know what? Tyrann Mathieu should have won your award in 2011 then, because he was the most electrifying player in the country. Okay, but you're a quarterback, and it's a quarterback-driven award. Okay, sounds fine. It is what it is. But Memphis, he got blanked against Oklahoma State. Their second team came in the fourth quarter, and he finally had a touchdown. What would happen? Let me tell you what would happen if Jayden Daniels did that. They would talk so much crazy shit about him. He's had to go off Memphis. LSU would be a sub 500 team without Jayden Daniels.
Easily. We know this defense isn't what, and I kind of spotted it early. I was like, the last time I was on your show, I was like, you know something? DBU doesn't look like DBU. I mean, there's some serious secondary issues basically going on with LSU. The only saving grace is what Jayden Daniels is doing on offense. And I think it was right before the Auburn game, because I pointed out that Auburn hadn't given up a passing touchdown in the red zone all year. Jayden, I think, had 2. And I was like, okay, let me write that down. Because nobody else has done it. He's done it twice. All right. Those are things I look for. When I'm looking for whether or not this player is superior to other players, I look, is he doing things that other players can't do? Nobody else in the SEC is doing it. Why is he? Right? And how is he doing it? Here's the most interesting thing about Jayden, because I'm telling you, I keep making this comparison, and it sounds like people are missing it. This guy is Lamar Jackson-esque. I'm telling you. Well, if you go back and compare what Lamar Jackson did at Louisville, and you look at what Jayden Daniels did, just put them side by side. It's Lamar Jackson-esque. Now, I know I was one of the only guys that thought he was like a high 4 or 5 coming out of high school. I know it. I know that he was getting 4 stars and high 3 stars, and I was like, what are people missing? So I get how people can miss this because I've seen it happen before. I've watched people miss on Lamar Jackson. And
31 teams in the NFL passed up on him.
Exactly. I've watched people miss on Lamar Jackson, and he's still starting right now for Baltimore, and people are looking around like, man, this kid's still good. Well, he's an NFL MVP. There's a reason for that. I'm saying that Jayden Daniels is Lamar Jackson-esque. There are some things that Lamar Jackson does better than Jayden. There's some things that Jayden does better than Lamar. So I'm looking at this and I'm comparing the two. When did we give Lamar Jackson the Heisman? We also gave him the Maxwell, by the way. First year.
Just so our listeners who don't know, which you're a voter for.
I'm a voter for the Maxwell Award. And the semifinalists came out. I told you I was voting for him. And it's basically the other Heisman, if you think about it like that. It's the best player in college football. What did Lamar Jackson do that year? Well, he ended up 7-4. How did that go? Well, he lost to Clemson. Clemson went on and won the national championship that year.
Yeah.
And he had 2 late losses. Houston, and interestingly enough, Houston was in the American Athletic Conference, was still in the American Athletic Conference. I think Louisville had left either year, I think 2 years before. But Houston, he lost to Houston late in the season, and then to Kentucky, back-to-back. At the end of the season, back-to-back losses, Houston and Kentucky. Both of those teams weren't 10-win teams. I think Houston, as a matter of fact, Houston went on to play us at the end, Memphis, and lost that game. So they beat Lamar Jackson, but couldn't beat Memphis. That's Houston. That's the type of team Houston is. And then of course you get into your rival Kentucky. They didn't have anything to do that year. I think they were like a 6-6 team or something like that. or maybe only had 5 wins at that time. I don't know. But they won. They had to beat this guy, and they did it. They beat Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing about that season is that when you go back and look at it, I think Lamar Jackson had 30 touchdowns because that was one of the marks I was looking at. And right now, I believe
Jayden Daniels has 38.
had 30 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Season's not over yet, though.
Yeah, I mean, look,
compare rushing yards.
Georgia State's pass defense, Memphis, just so you know, I think Grambling, so HBCU, FCS Grambling, has a better secondary than Georgia State. They are horrible. Like, this man might have 300 passing yards in the first half if they're not careful. I'm dead serious.
He could run it up. I mean, he might get to 4,000 before everything's all said and done this year.
He would be the only player not named Joe Burrow, if he does what we think he can do, to be the only player to have 5,000 total yards and 40-plus touchdowns. That's Memphis, what are we talking about here?
We're talking about revisionist history because people like, and I get it. Look, I'm getting old. You see this gray. I forget things too. I forget things too. People forget. I mean, RG3 might have forgotten exactly how his season went that year. People forget about Lamar Jackson
and seeing how he LSU at Citrus Bowl. He got blanked in that Citrus Bowl versus LSU.
Exactly, blanked. The defense, their defense was terrible.
Terrible.
Oh, imagine how he played on a bad defensive team. Yet he was one of the shining stars on it. That sounds like Jayden Daniels. This is you can make almost a 1-to-1 comparison between Jayden and Lamar Jackson.
I agree.
And I don't understand why people don't see it. For me, it's something that it's easy for me to see because I'm like, okay, I remember. There are some people that believe that wins and losses should be hung on the quarterback. And as I see this game, as you see this game, it's a team stat. If you don't have a defense, especially the people that don't understand defense, they'll always say wins and losses are on a quarterback. Like they'll hang the losses on Shedeur and not realize, A, he doesn't have an offensive line, and B, that defense is suspect. It's probably worst defense in the FBS. It's an interesting thing, but they can't. They don't have the ability to actually look at the player and evaluate the player for who the player is. You know, they're just looking at the team and how the team's winning and losing. And hanging on him. And the opposite, honestly, I'll say who's benefiting from their team more than they're helping out? Bo Nix. I'm telling you this right now. Bo Nix, now, has he done better than he ever did at Auburn? Absolutely. Has he progressed since Auburn? Absolutely. But I guarantee you right now, there would be no question on who's winning a national championship if Jayden Daniels was on Oregon. None. The question is whether or not Bo Nix can win those big games. It's always been the question. He had one against even
Washington. Well, I mean,
exactly,
the thing with me with Bo Nix, Memphis, is simple. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Jayden Daniels, every single week this year, whether it be Ole Miss, who, by the way, is going to be a 10-win team during the regular season. The only time that it's happened twice in their history is under Lane Kiffin. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, he had to do it against Missouri, who's going to be the second team in the East. He beat them single-handedly, okay, who just dismantled Tennessee. Which, by the way, a little brag on myself, I picked Missouri to finish second in the East. Just going to throw that out there, okay? And then you go to Alabama. I understand he got knocked out. Okay. I get it. All right. But he tied the game late in the first half with that amazing pass. They score. He comes back out in the second half. Nobody, literally nobody this season has scored a second half touchdown coming out at half against Alabama. He did it. Now then, he has an interception on the pick. Or on the tap up. Okay. Well, why can't LSU's team defense make a stop? Okay. If they make one stop, that game's 28-21. He's got the ball back.
Yep,
So
exactly.
but here's the biggest thing for me though. I say all of that, even to Lamar. Ain't nobody throwing the ball around in the country like he is and running the way that he is. Right? Like Memphis. He's insane. So
Lamar won the Heisman and he had 9 interceptions and 30 touchdowns. Jayden, I think, only has 4 interceptions.
And that's what 5 total turnovers. By the way, Bo Nix has that almost against Washington.
Right. If you're looking at efficiency, and see, I know I get it. Some advanced analytics and everything else are more NFL stuff than college stuff, right? We use the eye test. We still use stuff like that. But if you're just looking at quarterback efficiency, you can go look up this stat right now. Jayden Daniels leads all quarterbacks in QB efficiency. Now, that should matter at some point in time. When you're trying to differentiate between, quarterback, okay, what does this mean? Well, what's he doing? 30 touchdowns, and as a quarterback, 30 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That's amazing by itself. You can you can stop right there because we know that Lamar Jackson won it in 2016 with 30 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. So if you think about what he's done, and I compare those defenses, that Louisville defense was kind of terrible, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was this LSU defense is. Ooh, I haven't seen
what there is. Call them what their ass.
I was like, man, Matt House, man, that's borrowed time, my friend.
Very much so. Let me ask you. Let me turn the page on you really quickly.
Yes.
A&M. Okay, their job is obviously open. Now, I'm old enough to remember when you came on the show about a month ago, and I asked you if you thought that they buy him out, and you said yes. And I will be honest with you. I took a step back because I was like, man, that's a lot of money. And you didn't flinch. I'll give you your flowers on that one. I'm not surprised by the firing. I actually think it's somewhat of a flex that they can spend that amount of money to tell a dude not to coach. But who do you think, you're in that world, you talk to a lot of people, who do you think that they go after at A&M?
Well, what they're going to have to do, and I think it's going to be Elko. What they're going to look at, and I don't think they're going to. I was actually telling Mike, forgot Mike here in Tampa. He's an LSU fan. I was telling him this today. There's not going to be. You're not going to see 10-year contracts anymore. You just won't. Broadcast contracts have changed now. They're maybe 5 years at best. As a matter of fact, the ACC
everything's going incentive based. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's going to be more
incentive based and less time because things are changing so fast. I mean, there are people in the control room that are going to get replaced by AI in 5 years, maybe within 5 years. But because of that, broadcast is changing. 5-year deals are more the standard than 10. If you can't guarantee somebody's contract if you don't know what you're getting paid for 10 years. Now, the ACC's trapped in this long, the broadcast contracts used to be as long as possible. But if we can lock them in for 10, 15, 20 years, well, let's do it. And it was great for both sides. But now things are changing so fast. Valuations are changing so fast. You're not going to be able to do that. You don't know what it's worth. You'll get caught out here like the Pac-12, thinking you're worth something. Somebody told you you're worth something. You're not worth that. And everybody's gone. So you're not going to have long contracts anymore. I don't expect to see any more 10-year contracts. I just don't think it's going to sell for anybody. I mean, really, outside maybe your top tier 1 or 2 guys. Maybe you can pull that off. Elko for 5 years is what I'm thinking. That makes the most sense in my mind. Duke's, I mean, if you can do it at Duke with all the restrictions, with all you could do it at A&M. There's no, A&M can't say that they have higher, graduate requirements than Duke. I mean, and I think it was a
but they got a whole lot of weirdness.
Those midnight yells is something else.
Bro, that's so weird. Look, I got a beer, drink whiskey, and also listen.
Look,
I got a cowboy hat right here. But let me tell you what my country ass don't do, okay? My country ass ain't gonna be yelling at no 12 o'clock. I promise you that. You know what I mean?
No. It's weird. It's weird. But A&M, the thing about them is, and I think people didn't think that they could buy out. If you could actually issue that, you could buy it out basically. And I saw A&M. As a matter of fact, the reason why Texas and Oklahoma are headed to the SEC is there was one year, I forgot what year it was. I want to say maybe 2015, 2016, 2017. It's one of those 3 years where A&M was either first or second in terms of athletic revenue in the country. And
yeah,
I remember thinking to myself, when I started on radio, they were like 33rd. How did they get to? Did they just move to the SEC and all of a sudden they're first? They got money just throwing money around like that. Plus,
well,
they
and
already have.
also Manziel. I don't think people realize what happened when Manziel went there. Their tuition went up, and then their academic enrollees went up twofold. Literally, they have more people enrolled at Texas A&M than anywhere in the country. I don't think people realize that. Memphis, let's just say it's not this. It's much more expensive than this. Let's say one semester costs you $10,000 for one semester. Okay. Now do that times 103,000.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
And we know it's closer to 30.
Correct.
20, 30 grand.
But, and you know what's even more wild about that? The funniest thing I've ever seen in college football. You know that their athletic department got issued a $160 million check at halftime. The next day, Jimbo was fired.
Yep.
Now, let me ask you, what do you think about Jeff Traylor at UTSA?
I rarely say this about coaches because a lot of times we don't know. I think that's too big of a step for him. Now, look, I've met Traylor, and honestly, he's an excellent coach. But what they want, he has an aspect of what they want, but I don't think he has everything. He can recruit. He can, he can campaign. They need a campaigner. But I think Elko also, putting the right people around yourself in those positions is key. You have to have the right coordinators around, and rebuilding a program or actually getting a program like Duke in the conversation. The idea that we'd say, yeah, Duke's out here beating Clemson not far after Clemson won a national championship. That's ridiculous.
Well,
I think he's probably a better fit for A&M in the situation they are, because they're going to have to, if they hire Traylor, then it may be a two-step program. It may be a, hey, Texas, come in here, clean this place up for a couple of years, and then we'll go after who we really want. And some people are advocating for that just because they know the financial situation better than I do. I still think that they have enough money to go after whoever they want right now. Now, they can't miss on this one.
They cannot miss. They
cannot miss. If you're going to have a contract $5 million or above, you can't miss on this one. But hiring Traylor, you might be able to get Traylor at a discount. You might be able to get him for $4 million a year.
Here's my thing, though, and I know that you spent $78 million. I get it's a lot of money. And who am I to speak on money? Because it's not mine. I didn't have to stroke that check.
Right.
Everybody keeps telling me Dan Lanning's out of play because of a $20 million buyout, and I'm saying, listen, they want to win. They want to win, right? That's what they want to do. And let me tell you something. If you spend $78 million to buy out Jimbo and another $20 million to buy out Dan Lanning and the staff, and you do what you got to do, and you're $100 million into this, if you get it right, Memphis, he's worth $100 million.
Well,
right?
Absolutely.
The argument isn't here. It's ludicrous. Now, the only question becomes, is Dan Lanning that next dude? I don't know if he is. I don't know. He said,
okay, and that's actually an excellent question. So when Jimbo got fired, I asked myself, who would I go after? Who's my first call? Make Lanning say no. But it's not the buyout 20. What's 20 million these days? For a program like that that's willing to go and throw 70, 76 to have somebody sit around, what's 20 million? I mean, they might as well. I mean, that's a third of what they just spent.
Right.
to go get. Of course, that's the buyout doesn't matter right now. What matters is Phil Knight. Is Phil Knight going to let that guy leave? No, that's not. They could get into a bidding war, and it is probably going to end up really nice
for Dan Lanning.
Is it for Lanning? Yeah. But I'm not even sure that Lanning. Look, if Lanning took over that program, and they gave Lanning everything he wanted, he'd probably win a championship. He's going to
recruit his ass off. He's going to recruit his ass off.
But I'm not exactly sure if at A&M, it's almost they need a certain personality there, and I'm not sure if Lanning may be a little bit too rough under the edges. He's not going to be able to. If you watch that Washington game and watch him not kick those field goals, he's not going to be able to get away with that at A&M. You know, he's not going to be able to gamble. He's not going to be able to be himself. You know, he's still at a program where he can roll the dice because Oregon.
Let me ask you an off the wall question.
Yeah,
I know everybody keeps telling me no, and that it ain't gonna happen. You know who I'm about to ask. What about Lane Kiffin?
Oh, I thought you were going with Urban Meyer.
Okay, well, go with him too.
Lane Kiffin, I mean, you know, Lane will travel. Does Lane want? Does Lane want to be?
Billy Lucci's a lot of things. Billy Lucci came out on his radio show today and said that he can confirm that Lane wants the job. Now, he's the man that broke the story on Jimbo before Jim. Look, so this is what I know. This is what I know for a fact. Jimbo sent media members Lucci's text saying this isn't true. Sent it to his AD and said, and Ross Bjork, and Bjork said, "Can you come to my office?" He found out off of Lucci's Twitter. Okay, so let me say this. If Lane wants it.
Lane's somebody that I haven't. He's already in the SEC. You take away from Mississippi, who's kicking your butt right now. That's a win-win.
And then he just got dismantled by Georgia. And then his post-game press conference goes, "I can't get the 5 stars here." It's basically what he's saying. I can't recruit here.
But you know you could at A&M.
But you know you could at A&M.
And you know you could at A&M.
This is going to be the second time that his name, I'm telling you, listen, his name going to float up here in the next 3 days. His name going to float up.
I don't think that's out of the question. As a matter of fact, he's probably in the top 5.
Now, what about Urban?
I would definitely throw him in the top 5 of guys that you should call and say no before you keep going. And actually, logistically, it might work, honestly, because if you can cripple an opponent and rise up at the same time, it makes a lot of sense to do that. So it could happen. I mean, to the chagrin of Ole Miss, you know. Now, if you said Mississippi State, obviously it would. But and Ole Miss tries to be the brass of that state, but you know it's Mississippi. You know, I mean, not taking away. They have some really good barbecue down there too, but it's Mississippi. I mean, it's not. They're not. There are certain tiers to this thing, and they're not in the tier that can hold a championship coach for very long. And they're getting very close to playing for an SEC championship. So I think I'm with you on that. I think
what
that
about
can
Urban?
happen.
I just don't think there's any way.
To me, that's the most interesting one because I'm just like, well, if you're Urban Meyer, what's the point? Why would you come back? Unless
why that school?
Well, because they just paid that guy. I mean, if you end up if he gets some sort of deal like Jimbo, you take it. Because worst case scenario, you end up with $76 million, and you're like, well, you know, I'm $76 million richer after a couple of years.
Hey, you want to laugh? You want to laugh your ass off? You want to laugh your ass off? I had an SEC coach text me the clip of Rush Hour when Chris Tucker said 20 million 20s, 10 million in 10s. You want any fives with that?
Right.
I agree with that. I think that he cares more about legacy to some extent than because how much money? I mean, he just got paid $30 million not to be in Jacksonville. So there comes a point where I ask the question, how much is legacy and how much is want to?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I believe that too. And I believe that when he retired from Ohio State, that's kind of what it was about.
Right.
After Jacksonville, after all this stuff about, these gals and these clubs and everything else, he may be looking right now. I mean, his personal legacy is a little bit tarnished. He may be looking for an opportunity to actually rebrand. And what's a better rebrand? Hey, I wanted Florida. I wanted Ohio State. Those are blue. I mean, I guess those are blue blood schools. Texas A&M ain't won nothing in a long time. If I can at least win them an SEC championship, not even college football playoff, but an SEC championship. If I can win an SEC championship at A&M, why wouldn't I be the greatest? Why wouldn't my name be right there? And if I can do it, beating Nick Saban at the end of his career, why wouldn't I be, one of the greatest? Why wouldn't my name be next to his? And I think that's something that I started, me and the guys over at the Football Writers Association, we have these little Twitter groups and everything else, and we're throwing names in there. And when Herbs came out, I was like, nah. And then people started making arguments, and I was like, you know something? This doesn't sound as far-fetched as possible. Not having nothing to do. If you just took A&M off because eventually he's going to have to put a shirt on. But if you took A&M off and put up $76 million or $100 million in a contract, because there's not that many schools that can. There's maybe 10 schools that can do that. And you've already been to one of those schools. I don't even know if Florida could do that. But if you get paid that much, and you're looking for an opportunity to kind of rebuild yourself after your Jacksonville fallout, after all this, negative press personally, what best case scenario, you get an SEC championship for A&M, maybe get into the college football playoffs for the first time. Worst case scenario, $76 million. I mean, I want the same contract. I'll do better. And I think that if I'm Urban Meyer and I still am even remotely concerned about anything with my legacy, that's a perfect opportunity to take a team that really has, they got nothing to lose right now, and really take that team somewhere that they've never been.
The only national title they've won since 1936 is in meat judging, like cow, like T-bones, ribeye. I'm not joking. That is what they've won it in. Okay. I think legacy is important, especially when you have children. Listen, I might be a damn fool, but if you pay me $76 million to not do something, my legacy is written for generations on top of generations. It doesn't matter what you think.
Right.
All right.
Even if it's 50. $50 million is a lot of money, man. And I look at that. I look at what the contracts, and you may not be able to put because contracts are going to be changing here and be very incentive based and be shorter. You may not be able to put your hands on the type of money that Texas A&M is willing to pay now. There may be
that the incentive-based contracts, he could get a $5 million bump if he had the number one total offense in the country. That's what kind of stuff that they're talking about. All right, I got 2 minutes. Let me ask you this. UCLA, Mississippi State, any traction on those in your opinion?
Kelly, honestly, I really wanted to see what Brian Kelly. Look, I really want to see what Brian Kelly could do in the Big Ten. I'm like, well, I don't.
You mean Chip?
Oh yeah, Chip Kelly. I wanted to see what he could do in the Big Ten. I think that his schemes, personally, his offensive schemes, would work better in the Big Ten than they have in the Pac-12, and I would want to see at least 1 year of that.
The only thing is he's
Jarman.
33 and 33 at UCLA. Like,
Yeah,
sometimes you got to want to be better. You know,
it's mediocrity, and you know,
I could go 33 and 33 at UCLA.
it's media. I mean, I still want to see him play some of the. I wanted to see him against some of these Big Ten teams just to see exactly what that offense looked like against those. But Martin Jarman, hey, smart, very smart guy.
Right.
He really knows what he's doing, and if he wants to make the move now, then there's a reason. As a matter of fact, that's where I thought Lane Kiffin was going.
UCLA.
I don't know if he. I mean, going to the Big Ten, getting paid more. I mean, if you can't get it, I mean, you could get 5 stars at UCLA. You could get paid at UCLA. You don't have to play Nick Saban at UCLA. If you think your offense is really all that, you go to UCLA. You end up, playing against Ohio State or Michigan in a championship game. That may be a better situation than what and LA is LA.
Yeah, he's going to have to go through Kirby, Nick, Kelly every year. It just and whoever A&M hires. And by the way, Sark's in the league.
Right.
So it's going to be tough.
I mean, once Oklahoma and Texas get over, you're just like, well, what am I doing here?
Right. He's not going to get 10 wins.
So
moving on Summerall to Mississippi State?
I haven't heard anything of that nature just yet. But it doesn't sound out of the question to me. Like when people were throwing it around, I was like, that kind of makes sense.
If I'm Mississippi State, I'm calling Ed Orgeron right now.
I don't know why they haven't.
I mean, I'm kind of joking, but then in another, I'm not.
I don't know why they haven't. I mean, if you're Mississippi State, you just take Mississippi State. Mississippi State is one of those teams in the SEC that you look around and you're like, hey guys, you're not that much better than Memphis. You really aren't. If you just close your eyes and replace Memphis with Mississippi State, probably have the same team in the SEC. And so it's just like one of those, well, guys, you're gonna have to do something to be better than Memphis. You're in the SEC. Do something with that money. We would do something with that money. Go out there and spend on somebody. Go grab somebody that's going to make you a team that can win 9-10 games and at least be in the conversation. Because with Texas and Oklahoma coming in, it's going to get real bleak for some of these teams. And you're going to see coaches start looking at those jobs like, I don't know if I can be bowl eligible with this squad. I mean, if you really don't have it to get, I'm not coaching to be a doormat. If you don't really have a game plan together defensively, first of all, and then offensively, the SEC is going to get really, really hard to actually win. I think even harder.
I think now with the extended playoff, you could lose the SEC and win a natty.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. Like I think it becomes like baseball. Who wins the SEC? Well, LSU doesn't win the tournament. Oh, well, they win the natty. Well, it's just going to, when you do that, teams don't win the conference, but win the natty. All right. I kept you too long. Thank you so much. Tell everybody where they can find all your stuff, my man.
You can find me on Sports Radio America, sportsradioamerica.com, the TuneIn app, noon to 2 Eastern, Monday and Thursday. We have a really good beat writer named Serenity Martin, an LSU beat writer. Follow her. Don't you guys know who